Spoiler alert from Mushoku Tensei Volume 21. If you haven't read it, then I suggest you do so before continuing on to this video. After Rudeus had settled in Milis, Zenith gets kidnapped by her mother, and Rudeus is not happy. But little does he know, Claire isn't the real threat. Hello everybody, this is the Anime Bro here, and welcome to another video. And today, I'll be reviewing Mushoku Tensei Volume 21. Now before this video starts, please like, share, and subscribe for more videos just like this. And come back next time as I talk about Volume 22. And now, let's begin the video. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the story. Now Volume 21 was a really great story. It was basically Rudeus trying to get his mother back and basically him versus Claire. And not only was it really good with that story, but there was a lot of character development with Claire. We got to see more of her backstory and what she was really trying to do for Zenith, and it showed her as not a bad person. A very gray character. But then again, not really gray, because she's a great person, just she's not really good at expressing it. She's just very stubborn and doesn't really like to admit that whatever she did was wrong. And honestly, I really do like that. Especially with Mushoku Tensei and its history of doing volumes with a lot of major focus on one single character. This was really great. And also, the one thing I really do like is the great twist at the end with Geese. If you've read this volume, then you already know that Geese turned out to be a disciple of the man god. But not only that, but it turns out Geese was never on Orstrid's radar because of how weak he was. And honestly, that is surprising. It put more development into Geese. It showed that he was more than just some coward who ran away and also just a jack of all trades. It showed that he actually had a dark side to him. And especially after this, it's a very surprising turn that honestly was really well executed. I really did like it. It makes me actually like Geese more, because he's not just some background character. It turns out he's a major player in this game, in the battle between the man god and Orstrid. So it really is amazing. If I have to say one gripe that I have with the story, it's that there was too many extra chapters. Now, in this volume, we actually got 3. The last one was really great, because that was focused more on Geese. But the other 2, yeah, I could have lived without it. Honestly, I didn't really feel anything. It just seemed like, here's some extra stuff if you want to learn. Even though the main story was great, sometimes it's best just to end it there. We don't need any more. Alright, now let's talk about some characters. So the first character that I want to talk about is the Blessed Child. Now the Blessed Child is one of the key factors in the faction opposing the coexistence of demon in Milis. Which, for those who don't know, Milis has this political struggle in it, where one side opposes of coexisting with demons, like I said, and another side, which is the side that Cliff is supporting, wants to, be with demons and think that, as long as they're not doing anything bad, they should be accepted and by that. And the Blessed Child is a key factor in the opposing side. And although she is a member of that faction, she is willing to help Rudeus. Not because she finds him charming or anything, but because of the connection she has with Eris. A long time ago, Eris saved her life. And because of that, the Blessed Child has this idol infatuation with her. She very much thinks very highly of Eris. And also a last thing that we learn is that her power as a Blessed Child is that she can see the past of people by looking in their eyes. But only at a certain point. And what this mostly means is it's like how memories are. Memories exist, but they kind of fade away over time if you're not really thinking about it that much. So the Blessed Child could see through a lot of things, but if you don't have a really good memory, she's not likely to get anything out of you. So that's basically what I mean. And also a fun fact, she actually doesn't have a name. This whole time I thought, I may have missed her name, but nope, she's just called the Blessed Child by everyone. Even when Eris came to see her, she's like, okay, I don't have a name. And she could have been named Nurse, but that's the name of her owl companion. Which I guess, yeah, that's another thing. She has a summon pet thanks to Rudeus. And it's a cute little owl. And then the next character that I want to talk about is Theresa. So Theresa is the aunt of Rudeus Grey Rat and the sister to Zenith Grey Rat. And also the captain of the Estanian Keepers, who protect the Blessed Child. So she kind of has a good connection with the Blessed Child because of her position. And she's also with the faction that doesn't like the coexistence of demons. And she's also willing to help Rudeus out because they're family. And here's the thing about it though. She's not really with them because she is dedicated to the cause. It's more of like her family is. And therefore she is. So it's not really like she is a anti-demonist. She's just on the side because honestly she couldn't really care. And also another thing we learn is that she is looking for a husband. And one of the extra chapters is about her trying to meet a husband. So yeah, that's about it that I'll have to say. Nothing really has changed. And I mean, besides the last volume, everything is about kind of the same. We just know a little bit more about her. Next, we got Claire. Now, I've talked about Claire before, and I probably said some bad stuff about her, but here we actually get more into what is going on in her mind. So, she is very mean and is very stubborn. But she's also mean to herself. She tries to improve everybody, and including herself, so she always is very strict to her and her family. But it's more of like a caring way. She wants them to become better people in society, and doesn't want them to end up a terrible person, or like a hobo in her mind. And this also goes to Rudeus and Zenith. When they first meet, she actually kind of regretted how they met. She wanted to help Zenith as much as possible and was willing to even go to jail for Zenith. In fact, it is one of the most heart-wrenching scenes when Zenith actually tries to protect her mother because of what was going on. And honestly, it is a great moment, and I have more respect for Claire. She's not just a person who is mean and stubborn because everything has to be perfect away. She's genuinely thinking about her family first, and it is something that I honestly can relate to. So I really do like her as a character. And then finally, we got the best character in this volume, Geese. So Geese showed up in the middle of the city and started to hang around Zenith when he realized Rudeus was in town. And then when he gets Zenith lost, he goes and tries to help Rudeus get her back. And, it seems like all in all, everything is good. Geese is there, ha ha ha. He's the guy that's weak, but knows to do a lot of things. Until it gets to the very end. And it's revealed that Geese is actually Rudeus' biggest enemy. Geese is revealed to be the disciple of the Man God, and is now recruiting Man God members for the Man God himself, just like Rudeus is doing for Orstryd. And it's an interesting thing because I said before in the story part that Orstryd never really saw Geese as a threat. So the fact that he was revealed now shows that the Man God is going serious now. He's going to try to pull all the stops, trying to get everyone to recruit on his side, and it's showing that the war, instead of taking place in like a couple decades, is now probably going to be a couple of months, maybe a couple of years even, if things go really bad. So it's getting very intense now that Geese is revealed to be one of Rudeus' biggest enemies. We also get some backstory too, like he didn't want to live in his village. He wanted to go out and become an adventurer. But when it turned out it would be a lot harder than he thought, reality hit him really hard. But during one of the missions, the Man God actually told him to go somewhere and basically saved his life during one of the missions. It killed every member of his group, but he still lived on. And because of this, he actually thinks that he owes a lot to the man god and eventually becomes his full supporter, realizing that without him, he would be dead. And eventually this kind of warps his mindset, thinking that he needs to serve the man god even if he gets like the shorter end of the stick. And that is all I have to say about these characters. Alright, now let's talk about history. Now honestly, I would have locations here, but we kind of don't really have any new locations. So we're going to be talking about the history, or a brief history, of the Millis religion. Now, just to be full warned, this is all I was able to get from the volume itself. Any extra stuff that I don't know about would probably be found in other spin-offs that I may or may not get to in the far future. So comment down below anything I missed, any interesting facts I should know about the Millis religion. But anyways, let's get on to the history of the Millis religion, or some bits I learned. So first off, this is mostly just going to be talking about how the state of the country got to where it is now. So obviously the Millis religion is more like Christianity. You know, you got temples, you got a pope, or I guess not really Christianity itself, most likely the Catholic sect of Christianity, but it's still pretty obvious that most of it seems heavily inspired by Christianity itself. And one of the things that is brought up in this religion is how demons are considered evil. Like, you're not allowed to coexist with any of them. You're not allowed to befriend any of them. When you see them, you're supposed to kill them on sight. That's how it is seen in the doctrine that they say. Now, something actually happens where someone dictates that, you know, this is actually kind of going against another principle. Now, another part in the Millis faith is that every race is equal. So this kind of puts a contradiction to the demon thing. If all races are equal, wouldn't that include demons? And because of this, it eventually sparks somewhat of a cold war. There's not really a big major battle that going on. It's more of political battle going in between these two factions. There's a faction that agrees that Millis meant that demons do not count, as all races are equal. And then there are some people that believe that Millis said everyone is equal. And because of this, the factions split, and like I said, a Cold War begins. It's not like America versus the Soviet Union, where both sides were kind of equal in terms of power, and any one of them could have tipped the scales in their favor. Most of the time, it was just the side that supported the demons should be accepted had more people. But there's an interesting thing that we learn, is that even though they had more people, the people on the opposing side had more powerful people, so more political nobles and stuff in their corner. So in a sense, they kind of were on equal sides, but because more people were on their side, they kind of had a larger say in what things were going. Because even though nobles are very powerful and have ways to influence things, the numbers could change in their favor of just how many people there are. But eventually, everything really changed when the Blessed Child came. Because the Blessed Child came, what eventually happens is that the Millis faith has two sides that are kind of equal now. They have one side with the Pope, who's the leader of everything, who is called of Saint Millis to be the leader of the faith. And then you also got one side who has the Blessed Child, who many people believe is Saint Millis herself reincarnated. And it's an interesting thing that honestly I wish we could have got more of, but we won't, because this is Rudeus' story and not really Cliff's. So I'm probably sure that we won't get any more of this. But it really is an interesting, Game of Thrones type thing where politics intervened in this part of the story. I hope we get more, and honestly, it would be really great to get more things like that. And that is basically all I have to say about the Millist religion. I might have not done a great job about this, but if I left something out, or if I really, messed up a bit in this part, then, comment down below. You guys know this story a lot more, probably read it multiple times, and can tell me every single detail in this world. So if you know more and want to share it, then, just comment down below. Alright, now let's talk about iconic moments. So the first iconic moment that I have is Rudeus confronts Geese. Now, in the beginning of the volume, Rudeus goes looking for Geese after Zenith doesn't return home. He finds him in a tavern called Dabbling Light Tavern. Now, Rudeus gets ready to kill him because he thinks he did something bad with Zenith. But immediately afterwards, because this is Geese, he bows down and apologizes, not knowing what he did wrong. Geese then tells Rudeus what had happened, about him going to the Latria house, and how he found Rudeus' house, and how a servant came to the Adventurers District to, take Zenith away. Basically what happened when they were all out together. And then after that, Rudeus and Geese head off to Latria house to find Zenith. And I really do like this moment because it kind of puts into how much Rudeus cares. Like, even though he knew Geese for a while and knows the person he is, he was ready to kill him for the sake of his mother. So it shows when push comes to shove, he doesn't care. He's going in guns blazing and will do anything to protect his family. And I really do like that about Rudeus. And then next, we got Rudeus talks with the Pope. So Rudeus goes to see the Pope and tries to see if he can get some help getting his mother back. The Pope is willing to help if Rudeus does a favor for him. Rudeus doesn't know what favor he wants, but the Pope asks him what he can offer. And the first thing to Rudeus' mind is that he can kidnap the Blessed Child for him if he wants to, which is very crazy. Like, this guy is really angry that he's willing to kidnap someone just to get even with someone. Then again, they kidnapped his mother, so honestly, it's not really crazy where his head's going. But although it seems like a good plan, Cliff doesn't want that to happen. Cliff tells Rudeus that there must be a way for him to just talk it out with them instead of violence. And then Rudeus then thinks of a different plan and goes off to do it. Which the different plan is mostly just, get his family together and say, hey, Claire's not being really reasonable here. She just kidnapped my mother, and can you knock some sense into her and all that stuff. So Rudeus goes and does that. And I really do like this moment because it really shows the friendship between Cliff and Rudeus. Even though Rudeus was in there so mad, willing to get a part of this conflict, Cliff says, hey, you gotta cool down, man. Even though it is bad, there has to be other ways to do this besides, ruining your family's life. And it kind of does make me like Cliff a bit more. Just a little bit. I'm still kind of on the fence with the dude, but, this helps me like him a bit more. The next part that I want to talk about is Rudeus and the Blessed Child talk. Now, after Rudeus had some kind of mini trial where he is accused of planning to kidnap the Blessed Child, he eventually goes and kidnaps the Blessed Child. So Rudeus talks with the Blessed Child at a mercenary safe house. Rudeus wonders why she didn't hesitate to be kidnapped by her, and she replies that she didn't believe he was that bad of a person. They talk about many things, like the importance of her and the possible people behind Rudeus' spite, and especially on what to do now, because Rudeus just did a big thing by kidnapping, the most important person besides the Pope in the country. And another fun tidbit is that the Blessed Child sees inside Rudeus' eyes and sees his memories. And, he also sees all the times he had sex with his wives, because That's usually on Rudeus's mind, and honestly, it's something I still to this day don't like about him. And I honestly put this here because it's an interesting dynamic between Rudeus and the Blessed Child. We do get some moments about it, but this is the first time where we get to see them actually just talking to each other without anyone around. And also, I think it's here we also get to learn more of the history of the church, so that's a cool thing. And yeah, I really do like this moment. And then next we got the Great Meeting. So Rudeus goes to see the Pope with the Blessed Child as a hostage. There he meets his aunt and his grandfather. Well, the aunt he already met, but his grandfather he actually never met. I forgot his name, so I won't actually try butchering it this time. And when they go into the room, they see many powerful people in the city. They introduce each other, and then they proceed with the meeting. One of the people here accused Rudeus for trying to kill the Blessed Child, saying that an agent of theirs heard Rudeus talk about kidnapping her. And now Rudeus defends himself and says that he thought of it at first, but other people in his circle were against this idea. He then explains that he kidnapped her with consent so that his family member can be safe. Also saying that he did it because Claire took his mother away from him without Zenith's consent. The Pope then asks Claire if it is true. She says nothing, but because of this, it automatically confirms that she is guilty. And with the results of the meeting coming to an end, it is agreed that Claire would be sentenced to 10 years in prison in terms of kidnapping. Now, this is a really big moment because it is like, you could say it's like the climactic finale of this volume. Kinda. There's a lot more stuff that happens afterwards, but, we get Rudeus going on this vengeful rampage, trying his best to get his mother back, and eventually the person who kidnaps her gets what's coming to her, or so that we seem. Because after this moment, we get the next great moment, which is Zenith protecting her mother. So after the meeting, Claire gets handcuffed and is very saddened by what happened to her. As this is going on, Zenith goes in front of the guard trying to protect Claire. Cliff then objects to the sentence that is given to her and asks Rudeus if this is what he wanted, to see what kind of character he is like. Rudeus then asks Claire why she went out of her way to do this, but she refuses to give him an answer. But the Blessed Child asks Rudeus to spare her. He asks her again, but she still refuses an answer. As soon as Rudeus gives up, his mother, Zenith, slaps his face, and then she slaps her father's face, and it's because of this that Rudeus begins to cry. Zenith goes to her mother and puts her hands on her face. Claire then begins to cry, and then her husband begins to cry afterwards. He also asks her to tell the truth. Now, this is an interesting moment because this is when we realize something is not as it seems. If Zenith is willing to protect her mother, even though she was the one kidnapped, then what is the full story? Why did Claire actually do it? Why was Cliff actually against this? It could seem like, this wasn't unfair and stuff, but it really is an interesting thing that gets you thinking. And eventually this leads to the next part, which is Claire's perspective. Now, most of the time it just talks about all her life from the moment she met her husband to basically now. And one of many things we learn is that she lost one of her daughters to a political battle. And, her mindset during the times when she met Rudeus, when she met Norn and Aisha, when she met Paul, all these things that we see in her mind, and what she really tries to do for her family. I really do like this because it makes me really understand her as a person. Because before, I honestly couldn't like her. I hated her, in fact. But eventually when I learned this, instead of hating her, I began to understand her. She wasn't doing this because of selfish reasons. She had her family in the mindset. In fact, let's put this out here. The reason why she kidnapped Zenith was so that she could marry her off. But that was only because she read somewhere and she interpreted that the only way she could be saved is if she is basically having sex with a lot of men. Because she heard that the person who had the same curse as her eventually became free because of this. But it turns out it's not true, and yes, this is basically Alina Lisa's story. That is something we actually learned a while back. But the more important thing is mostly that what Claire tried to do was save her daughter. And I genuinely like that about her. And then after she tells her story, Rudeus then calls for the punishment to be revoked, but asks 3 things to happen. So first was that the Blessed Child would look into Zenith's mind. Get to see what she has been thinking about this whole time. Second was that the Millis Church would make an alliance with Orstrid, so that, if anything comes up where they need their help with the man god, they are on board. And that third was to restate himself as a member of the Lori family. And like I said, I really did like this moment because it showed me that Claire was a complicated person. She wasn't just a cardboard cutout, straight up mean old person that accepted the old ways. She generally had her family's intentions first before anything, and was willing to even go down by herself just to make sure that Zenith was actually well taken care of. And then the next moment that I got is Zenith's memories are revealed. Now, I'm not going to go into detail because it is a very long thing, but we eventually learn mostly on what Zenith sees the world. And we learn that she actually is conscious and aware of everything. She knew that Paul died. She knew that Rudeus has a family. She knows everything going on. But it's also sad to say is that she doesn't know what her face actually looks like. To everyone else, she looks like a person that doesn't have any say, or like basically a person that can't do anything. But in reality, she actually sees the world differently. She's interacting with people in her mind. She's doing things in her mind. It really is sad, but also in a way it's really happy because it puts in her mind that, everything is not bad for Zenith. She's feeling fine. She's doing okay. And Rudeus is, doing his best and all that. But that's not the only thing that's also confirmed. So another twist that we learn is that Zenith is a Blessed Child that can read minds. And she's been talking with one of Rudeus's daughters, Laura, pretty frequently. And it's a really interesting thing that we learn from this. Also, another thing that happens in this moment is that the Blessed Child becomes an ally to Orstrid. So, that's a good thing. Then next the next moment we got is Geese's letter. So, out of all the moments in this volume, this is the biggest one. This is the one that really shook up the story from now on. So from the time that Rudeus becomes a disciple to Orstrid to now, most of the things, it basically goes something similar to this. Rudeus gets a mission, or does something, and then on his way in his mission, he finds who the disciples are of the man god, and then he tries to defeat him. Now, believe it or not, this was the first time it is revealed that the man god had a secret up his sleeve in the form of Geese. Most of the time, the man god would hire people that were very dangerous. Powerful nobles, very skilled fighters, all these people that are really well known and can use their power to be dangerous. Not in anyone's mind, not in Orstrid, in Rudeus's mind, had anyone ever thought Geese was a disciple. The moment this was actually introduced, it was a big deal, because then it put it to this that Rudeus actually is not safe. The plan using the suit to actually fight the man god, well, now that was actually out of the way. But also the fact that the man god now has someone who could get people on his side. And eventually at the very end, we do get to see Geese doing that for the first time. And I really do like this, because this eventually changes the story a lot. It eventually becomes Orstrid versus the man god, with Rudeus helping, to Orstrud versus the Man God, and then Rudeus versus Geese. The next time we see Geese, he is going to be fighting for his life. And the same with Rudeus. And this definitely is a great moment that really shook up the story, in my opinion. And then finally, I got the end. Well, I don't really have anything, I'm just going to call it the end. And this is kind of like the Lord of the Rings ending, if you kind of know what I mean. Where a lot of things just happen and Rudeus goes off to his next adventure. So Rudeus continues looking for Geese. Rudeus parts ways with Cliff. The Blessed Child gets a companion in the form of an owl, and Claire smiles at Rudeus before he leaves. In fact, I'm hoping I used the picture. If I didn't, then it's right here. This nice little picture here. And honestly, this is just here to say, everything was wrapped up in the Miller's continent. Cliff is going to go on his journey. The Blessed Child now has some more protection with Orstrud and a companion. And Claire has now mended the bond between her grandson. And it's really amazing and all that. I really do like this moment. Okay, so let's talk about the final moment that I really have. The wolf and the monkey. This, I gotta say, is probably the best extra chapter. In terms of story, this is definitely the one that's really the best. And honestly, I'm surprised this is not even an actual ending chapter, because this is insane. Geese is now on a mission to recruit allies for the Man God. And the first one he gets is apparently a well-known fighter who actually fought Orstrud, which is insane. And it also shows like the mindset that we have with Geese, and also the history of him too. So it's really a good way to end off the volume. Just the thing is that it's an extra chapter and not an actual chapter. But the fact that we have it is better than nothing. And I really did enjoy that chapter. Alright, now let's end this video. So if I were to rank this volume, I would honestly rank it an A. This is a really great volume, has great character development, it has great world building too, and it ended things with a great plot twist that will definitely be something coming back in the far future. I really enjoyed Claire in this volume. I began to hate her, and then I enjoyed liking her. Not like Lillian, who I began to hate her, and then I hated her more at the very end of her volume. This was definitely a great volume and did really great character development. Not with just Claire, but with also Geese. Now that we know Geese is a disciple of the Man God, things are going to change. Because this wasn't just some random powerful person. This was someone we knew. This was someone Paul knew. Someone Zenith knew. This man was so important to the Grey Rat family that he was basically family. And now he's Reese's greatest enemy. His greatest adversary. And honestly, it is going to be an amazing thing. Now, if I do have to say something, I don't get why we got 3 extra chapters. I was fine with the last extra chapter. That made sense why we ended things off there. But the fact that we got one with the Blessed Child and Eris, and even with Thurcia looking for a husband, that's kind of stretching it here, really. We could have just ended off with the wolf and the monkey. Definitely a great extra chapter as a whole. Now, where would I place this as one of my favorite volumes? I wouldn't put it in top 3. It's a good volume as a whole, but my number 1 contender, I think, will still have to be Volume 7. Volume 7 is just the best volume, in my opinion, and did one thing that no other volume has ever done since. And I will review that when I actually get done with these episodes. I will explain more when I get to Volume 26. Alright, and that is the end of this video. If you really enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe for more videos just like this. And come back next time as I talk about Volume 22. After the reveal of Geese, things are now rolling pretty fast. And Rudeus doesn't have much time left to find allies in the battle against the Man God. And as always, I'm the Anime Bro. Have a wonderful day, and see you guys later. Peace!